Absurdist Asylum, the show that's too weird to live and too damn stubborn to die. I'm Jason Velarde, and we have film student and maker Brad Cousy back on the show. Now step into the padded cell, get fitted for a straitjacket. It's movie night in the Asylum. Hey, welcome back to Absurdist Asylum. If we got any fans who stuck around for the a little over a year it's been since our last episode. It was mid-January that we recorded the one about the room and the disaster artist. So if anybody's still with us since then, wow, we appreciate it. But we're back and we're excited, and it's been a long time. So Brad, how have you been in these long year or so? Seen any good movies lately?
Yeah, I have seen quite a few good movies. I just can't believe it's been a full year since we've done an episode. That's crazy. Right out the gate, I mean, I've seen a lot of films that were, nominated in the Oscars. I've seen a lot that probably nobody's ever even heard of. There's one called The Chernobyl Diary. Have you seen that one?
I've seen The Chernobyl Diaries. It's a good one. It's a little bit of a slow drag if I remember correctly, but the ending has got a good payoff.
Okay. Yeah. It's I mean, like how you say drag, because there's a lot of people being dragged into darkness. I don't know if you did that on purpose, but good pun.
I mean, of course I did.
Let's see, what else have I watched? I've seen a lot of documentaries lately, but strictly filming. I mean, I'm a big fan of Bohemian Rhapsody. I know it's been out for a little while, and I'm on the bandwagon.
All right, I have yet to see. I don't think any of the Oscar nominees. Most of the movies I see are. I saw Wreck-It Ralph 2, which was probably the last movie I saw in theaters, which I wasn't a huge fan of. But
that's old.
Yeah, it was a while ago. I just bought tickets for Captain Marvel though today, so we're gonna go see that. Not opening day, but a couple days after.
But something opens tomorrow, isn't that Captain Marvel?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, tomorrow's Thursday. Yep.
My brother gets to go to that. Lucky, I'll be at work, or I'll be at school.
Oh yeah.
But yeah, I'm excited for that when that comes out. That's supposed to be one of the best MCUs out there.
I mean, I'm a sucker for the Marvel movies. It amazes me that people can still like hate on the Marvel movies, considering the fact that they're on movie 20 and movie 21. Captain Marvel is almost guaranteed to pump out like $500 million worldwide. So it's like it's pretty difficult to say that those are bad movies.
Yeah, well, I mean, look at the other end of the spectrum with DC.
Yeah.
The only one that I've ever really liked was Aquaman. That just came out recently.
Yeah. So.
The other ones are pretty garbage.
I haven't seen Aquaman. The only one that I thought was like halfway decent was the what was it? Wonder Woman. Wonder Woman was fairly decent.
Oh yeah. I like that one, but got to be careful with what you say about it.
I mean, let's go no further then and slip right into tonight's movie. With tonight's movie, I don't remember where I heard of it. I just watched it with my wife earlier today, and after she was done, she was like, "Where did you hear about that?" And I don't know. I want to say it might have just been one of those cringy countdown videos that I watch at YouTube while I'm working, that I shut my mind off, and I'm just like top 10 blah blah blahs, and then this just piqued my interest. So that may have been where it came from, but
I heard about it a while back. It's been on Amazon for a really long time.
So I guess before we keep everybody in suspense, the movie we watched was Frequently Asked Questions About Time Travel, featuring Chris O'Dowd and Anna Faris. Speaking of, you heard me say watched. It's a little breakup in format. We're not going to split up in between. We've actually taken some time to watch the movie beforehand, making it less of a a time investment per podcast for us. Actually, it might even be more considering I watched the movie like 3 times at this point. But and we don't have to do it all in one chunk. So plus I think we get a little bit of some perspective on it, not having like just freshly watched it. So
yeah, after 24 or 48 hours, we actually can remember more parts and start actually criticizing, or which is mainly what we do, but criticizing and giving out fame to parts of the movies.
Yeah. Well, the movie plot is basically these guys are at a bar, a pub. Well, I guess it starts off somewhere else, but the chunk of the movie is that they're out at a pub, and they kind of start tripping through time, essentially. Like they're not meeting to time travel, but they keep getting pulled into these time travel scenarios. And this is Chris O'Dowd and his 2 friends, who, of course, I don't remember their names, but let's get them pulled up right now. Mark Wooten and Dean Lennox Kelly, who play Toby and Pete. They're just kind of hanging out at a bar, and then one of them runs into Anna Faris, who plays what is she? She's a time cop, essentially, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's time cop or like a time enforcer or something, but I like how every time we see her, it's a different Anna at a different time, because they keep accidentally jumping through time, and they just don't know what's going on.
Yeah, I think that kind of brings me to a point that I wanted to touch. Is this movie did such a good job with a small budget, and I didn't get an exact budget on I didn't get an exact budget as to what they spent on the movie, but I did get a comment from the guy who wrote it, Dirk Gently, and they asked him what he would do if he had to like write the script for having such a small budget, and he said he definitely had to kind of plan for having a budget. And I wanted to ask you, because you are in film school and you do have to, I mean, I hear that you actually have to pay for the movies that you make out of your own pocket on top of film school. What sorts of cuts have you had to do in order to get like something into the budget, or get the shot you wanted, per se?
Well, I mean, I'm as a director of photography or cinematography major, I want to make it look as best as I possibly can. I want everyone to look at most of the movie and be like, oh my God, that was such a cool shot, or wow, that was really beautiful. Problem is that requires a budget. So I couldn't find an exact budget they did on this either, but just by watching the movie, I could tell they only had 2 locations. They had a pub, and they shot inside and outside of the pub, and then they had a studio where they rebuilt, the torn down city and all that. So they didn't have a whole lot of budgeting for location, and location is one of the biggest things for the film. You can film a scene anywhere you want, but it's the location that really sells that fact that it's not a movie. You're involved in watching this scene unfold.
Yeah, I think that's one thing that the movie does really well, is that they make great use out of the little they have. It does come across in some parts where they want to go outside, but they never really do. That you as a viewer, you kind of want to see what's going on there a little bit more. But the fact that they did all this at what basically looks like a pub built in somebody's house, or was somebody's house, because it has like a weird backyard with the swing set and shit. But and the fact that they kind of illustrated time travel by changing, like you said, changing Anna Faris's hair and her clothes to kind of insinuate time has passed.
Right. That, and I think definitely keeping this movie as a comedy, because it was definitely a comedy. I laughed my ass off on parts of it. That kind of helped sells the illusion of the theme they're going for, because if it was more serious, it wouldn't work. They would have needed a much bigger budget. They would have needed, graphics and all sorts of stuff.
Yeah, I feel like there was two specific scenes where they kind of blew their budget on like CGI shots. One was the first one where they kind of like fool you into believing that he's actually like on a spaceship because they kind of like zoom in and the title credits from outer space and then onto it like a CGI spaceship, and then Chris O'Dowd is like decked out in Space Marine gear and he's given this like rousing speech.
Yeah,
And,
at the very beginning.
yeah. And then the other scene where after they had already time traveled some, and it looks like they're in like this post-apocalyptic nuclear radiation area. They have a CGI like giant ant, and I like how they double fake you with the giant ant because they think the characters are scared because they think they hear this thing coming, and then it turns out the noise they hear is just like this dude pushing the squeaky shopping cart, and then you kind of like lose the tension because these guys are super scared and they ran away, and then this big CGI ant come and bites the dude's heads off. Spoiler.
And it wasn't even a good CGI ant. You're like,
no,
oh.
I think it was actually intentionally cheesy.
Yeah.
For the fact that it's just that type of movie, and two, it probably made it easier to do in budget.
Oh, definitely.
Like, I'm surprised it wasn't just like the old like 50s style ant that's just like a wire ant that they kind of like wiggle around to make it look like it's moving.
Yeah, going back with special effects, like old school mechanical special effects.
Yeah. But not that there's anything wrong with practical effects. I can't. But yeah, not that there's anything wrong with practical effects. I mean, CGI is getting so good, it's kind of getting to that weird uncanny valley where it's like you can't even tell if it's a real or a person. Going back to the Marvel movies, they can age like Robert Downey Jr. or the old Ant-Man. I can't remember his name right now, but they can like de-age them and make it look almost spot on.
Yeah, and it's weird because like our generation is so used to good CGI movies now, movies and TV shows, that when you see it when it doesn't look that great, it immediately takes you out of the film. You're like, oh, that CGI sucked. Like the story could have been really, really good, or the actors and actresses could have been really talented, but like what pulls you out is like, man, that CGI sucked.
Yeah. So going back to the movie, when he's making this rousing speech in space, and they're trying to sell you on like him being the Space Marine, and then I don't remember what gives it away exactly. I think they quick cut to a bunch of kids like watching him with 3D glasses on, and then he starts cursing and talking about how they're gonna like destroy the effing enemy and all that, and the kids start crying, and basically he kind of freaks out and sets off an alarm. Like the kids start losing their lunch and like freaking out because it's like a 3D space ride, right? And so and then the next scene is him getting fired, and they do this thing in that scene where they like there's no dialogue. It's just like kind of ominous. Well, there's kind of like military music, and then it kind of switches to like an ominous music, and they do a good job with the not using dialogue to kind of like sing home that the reality that they tried to sell us of him being like engrossed in this Space Marine role. And then the real reality is now he's like doesn't have a job and he's got like a kind of a crappy life. They use that silence to kind of like bang that idea home that the reality is not the reality that he wants.
Well, the silence also, I think, plays in part with his character arc, because at the very beginning, because there's no, he doesn't try to talk to the boss. He just accepts the fact that he's getting fired with no dialogue. And that kind of makes him look like, the weaker of the power struggles. And then throughout the film, as it builds, he becomes, I wouldn't say the most powerful, but his character arc goes from like 0 all the way around. So he kind of becomes the leader. He leads the guys through all the space jumps, and he's kind of like the brains and the decision making. So I think that might be another reason why they did it. but it could have also been, we got to cut this together really fast because we have no budget, and so let's just do it without no dialogue. I've done that.
I mean,
sometimes it works, sometimes it does not, and it looks like
I think more towards what you said, kind of building towards his character arc in that scene as he's leaving. He does kind of give that last death throes of trying to kick over some stuff in his boss's office, but then his boss kind of gives him half a sideways glance, and immediately he goes to pick it back up. So I think it does kind of build towards that character arc, like you spoke about.
Yeah, and also he's the only one I think that actually arcs. Like, all the characters are supposed to have an arc, and in good filmmaking, the main character should definitely arc, and then the villain should not, because you don't want to bond to the villain.
Yeah.
Because we as humans bond to people that go through a change kind of thing.
Uh-huh.
And so the other characters who didn't arc, they're just kind of like the same. I love the ending of the movie. Like, you could tell there was no arc, because he's like, come on, let's go and save the world again with Anna Faris, who is now also my girlfriend for the last 2 years.
Uh-huh.
And then he goes, no, we're just going to go down to the next pub instead. So, like, he's, like, ready for the adventure, and the other two guys are like, we'd rather just go drink.
Yeah, the peak, like, with the Toby character, they kind of tried to force a little bit of an arc near the end, and we'll get to the end. But the Pete character definitely had no arc, and it kind of brings me to a question. Is it just like a movie trope to have the one friend who's kind of an asshole to everyone, like always playing pranks or talking shit? Is that something that's like pretty common?
It's called in a lot of buddy comedies. There is. It's that character is like the comic relief. Uh-huh. He's there to kind of break the tension if there's a lot of tension, or he's there to try to. He's there to show bring forth the red herrings, which are just like big arrows saying like, hey, listen to what I'm saying because it's really important.
Yeah.
Most of the time, whatever the comic relief character gets, or supporting actress or actor gets, whatever they say is usually somewhat important, because they don't get a lot of lines. So when they do get a line, it makes sense for it to be important. And that's where, like I said, red herrings come in. Just things that audience members normally wouldn't pay attention to if the main character said it, but because the secondary character said it, you're like, oh, okay, I should probably listen to what he said. But yeah, I mean, there's also movies, I've seen a bunch of movies where, the comic relief character is just there to make you laugh. Like, he doesn't really have any other reason other than, well, this scene got a little too, dicey. Let's give him a weird line or a joke, and we can brighten up the scene a bit.
Let's throw in a ha-ha here and there.
Yeah. And it's usually awkward, especially because this movie was, I don't know exactly who filmed it or when it was filmed, or, I mean, where it was filmed. I don't know if it was in, like, the UK or anywhere, but, like, British comedy is more dry sense humor than American. So I think that's kind of maybe where it was either written and or filmed at, was probably somewhere near Britain or UK or somewhere around that.
Well, it was definitely filmed in London, because it's a BBC production.
It was.
They have filming locations in London, England, and Pinewood Studios. So you're right. They had probably the pub in London, and then Pinewood Studios is where they rebuilt the pub.
They probably didn't spend a whole lot of time. I bet this whole movie was probably filmed in 2 months. I bet it wasn't like very long. When you have one location and you have all access to that one location, you just knock out scenes and just start, as long as they look good and everything is done correctly and everything's on time. Like, I bet they saved a lot of money just by doing that one location. I actually think it would have been worse if they had more. Like, if they went to an actual abandoned city, or if they went back to their other house, or they went to another pub. I think keeping it in the one location gave them the chance to keep the audience, because time travel movies are really hard. We actually just talked about this in my class last Tuesday.
Oh yeah, so that's one thing I did want to ask you about. Do you have like any favorite time travel movies?
Time travel movies that are my favorites. Man, I don't know about favorite. I mean, I'm a big fan of the Back to the Future movies, obviously. I think everybody is. I don't think one person is not a fan of that. You could say the first Star Trek was a time travel movie.
The first of the new Star Treks.
Yeah, with Chris Pine
Yeah, it
and
definitely
all.
was a time travel movie. There was
Yeah, because they went back in time a few
some
times.
fuckery.
The plot was based around that. But this is probably the funniest time travel movie that I've seen.
Yeah, it's definitely up there as far as like not taking itself too seriously. Um, I think one of my favorite time travel movies would probably be like I don't know. The Army of Darkness was a good one.
Oh God, I forgot about. I was kind of classifying that as more of a horror, but yeah, it's definitely time
Well,
travel.
there's some time travel. It's not like uh I mean, it starts off with time travel, I guess. But or Bill and Ted's Excellent Adventure is another great time travel movie that doesn't take itself too seriously.
I don't
Um,
think anything in that movie is serious.
I thought for a second that the name of the pub that they're in, called the White Horse Inn, was a reference to Bill and Ted's Wild Adventure, because I was thinking that their name was White Stallion, but then I realized I'm an idiot and their name is actually Wild Stallion.
Oh,
So
it'd be interesting to watch it again and see what I missed.
yeah, I definitely saw. I mean, it's not like a crazy in-depth movie, but there are definitely some things on there that are you catch them on your second viewing or so. One of the things, Anna Faris's necklace in one of the first scenes is a butterfly, um, and it's like a Easter egg to the butterfly effect, which
Mm.
is not only another good time travel movie. I don't know how you feel about that one, but
Oh yeah,
also it's a theory about what would happen if you were to like change something small during time travel, and then that effect would butterfly out into something bigger in the future. It's
actually, I think in the movie that we watched, when she holds the necklace, the butterfly necklace, while she's trying to explain what she thinks. What was that term he used? The term about changing very small things will still have an impact
that's
later.
the chaos effect
The
or
chaos
chaos
effect.
theory.
So I wonder, and I think she was playing with the necklace in that scene. So that's another like paying
Yeah.
homage to that movie.
Yeah, I actually, I when I was a kid, I read the Lost World book, which had a lot to do with the chaos theory. So I thought it was really interesting. Um, but so, and the whole book itself was based on like the dinosaurs like getting more and more chaotic, which was breaking the park more and more. But there's
Uh,
actually a lot of interesting stuff on like Wikipedia about the chaos theory, if that's something you want to look into. I'm not smart enough to explain it, but
Jason, come on, I believe in you.
that makes one of us.
We're both gonna have to get properly fucked up and then see if we can explain it to somebody else.
I mean, fair enough. That's fair.
Let's go to the White Horse Inn where these guys went and see if we can travel into a paradox.
That's fair. That's fair. Um, so I guess we'll get a little bit deeper into the plot. Uh, at one point, like we mentioned, Anna Faris comes back in time to basically just introduce herself to Chris O'Dowd's character, and she kind of tells him that he's like very important figure in the future. And of course, he doesn't believe her. He thinks that she's like a setup by his friends to kind of mess with him, because he knows they know he likes time travel. He doesn't stop talking about it through most of the beginning, 25 minutes of the movie.
Yeah. Well,
Um,
maybe not that long, but
it's a little ways into the movie, yeah. Where,
yeah.
well, I mean, they talk about it through the whole movie, but
But he thinks it's the setup.
yeah. So um, he thinks it's a setup, and then as he's explaining it to his buddies, one of his buddies gets up and goes to the bathroom, and we get an extensive shot of him dancing around, singing in the bathroom. And
That's
then
my favorite shot of the whole thing.
I mean, it's either that one or when they do it all together later. But
Oh
when
God, I
he
forgot
comes
about that.
out, he sees that the pub that he was just in had a bunch of people in it, is filled with a bunch of dead bodies, and he sees himself as a dead body. So he freaks out, runs back into the bathroom, and then comes back out, and everything's normal again. And so he explains to his buddies what just happened. And of course, they don't believe him. He says, "You don't believe me? Come into the bathroom with me." And so they all go into the bathroom, do the same song and dance number all together, um, and then come back out, and nothing happened. But then they realize that I'm actually. It's funny that I say it right now. They realize that they're still sitting at the same bar that they just left. If that makes any sense, like there's two of them now, and there's a set of them in the past, and so that's when they realize, like, all realize there's actually something weird going on with the time. Um, and then Chris O'Dowd catches Anna Faris on her way out from talking to earlier Chris O'Dowd, and explains like, "Oh, some weird stuff's going on," and she doesn't believe him, and then disappears for just about a second, and then this is where we get the cool costume change where she comes back and explains that there's a rift in time, and all they need to do is just continue hiding in the broom closet because she's going to go fix it.
She's going to fix everything. And man, that whole thing is brought up like 3 times. She's like, "It's okay. It took me 6 months longer, but I fixed it." And then chaos ensues, and then they meet her again, and she's like, "Oh yeah, it was another 6 months, but I got a promotion and I fixed it." And it's just like every time you see her, it's like you didn't fix anything. It got worse.
It's funny how, like, so that kind of happens a couple times. They get to one of the times they go into the bathroom and come back out, and it's the like nuclear future that we saw where the bar's broken down, like we talked about. They kind of they're in a different set, and it looks like they just like sprayed dust all over the walls. I don't know how they did that, but it looks like they took just like a ceiling sprayer and
it looked exactly like that.
Yeah.
To make it look like it was snowy and cold.
Yeah, it almost looked like a nuclear fallout.
Yeah. It looked like spray insulation that people spray their house with.
Yeah, oh, that's exactly what I thought. Like you spray the steel columns of buildings to insulate them.
Yeah, that's exactly what it was. Well, at least I think.
But yeah, so being as it looked like a nuclear fallout situation, I actually did some research to see how much danger they would be in spending that amount of time, which wasn't a very long amount of time. What do you think? They're probably in the bar in that kind of scene anywhere between like 20 to 30 minutes total, because they didn't spend a whole lot of time there, but not actual film time, just kind of like guesstimating how long they were actually there. But it turns out that extremely high doses of radiation can kill you in about an hour, but that's extremely high. I think they probably would have felt it by the time they were leaving there if they
oh, you mean like story-wise?
Yeah. So it'd be I don't know, funny or just ominous to have like the whole movie over and then Toby goes to the hospital because he's got radiation poisoning.
Well, I mean, they could have added a scene or added something to where like one of them starts getting sick and they're like, "Oh fuck," instead of, I don't know, but I like the memorial they have of the 3 of them painted on the building, and they're just like, "What the fuck?"
Oh yeah, that's right. So they do, in that scene where they're kind of in that nuclear winter, they all change clothes or at least put on some warmer clothes because it's cold. But then they find, when they step outside, they find a mural of themselves wearing those clothes, and they don't really know what it's for. I don't think anything really happens with it in that particular scene until they go back into the bathroom and come back out.
Yeah, that's when they go back to the bathroom.
Yeah. So they go back into the bathroom and come back out, and they find out there's like a party with all these people who are all dressed like each of the 3 of them. So it's like a costume party where they're all dressed like in these like paint covered sweaters and
the theme party.
Yeah, ratty clothes. And they eventually find out that these people are there because they left some sort of writing behind at the bar that somebody found, and it made them like famous in the future, like almost godlike. He says at one point, he says, "I look like Jesus."
They were painted like Jesus.
Yeah. Um,
Oh, we still never find out what the fuck it was.
I think that's very important. It's almost like we never find out what's actually written on the piece of paper that makes them famous, but uh, that I think that's very important. Almost like the monsters in Bird Box. Have you seen Bird Box?
No, not yet.
All right, so I'm sure you've heard that you don't actually see the monsters.
Yeah, I've heard a lot about Bird Box.
So it's almost like it would, if it wasn't the right thing on the piece of paper, I could give two shits about like what the movie was. It's like they made it ominous enough, or not ominous. Um, I guess ominous could be a way to describe it, but they made it just like vague enough to where you could believe that he has like some holy manuscript insight written on the other side of this like letter to Hollywood he's right, where he's as they put it, slagging off bad movies.
Yeah. Well, there's also the scene when they go back to find the piece of paper to see what the hell it was that made him so famous. When they lift it up off the table, they all get glowed by this like or this gold light,
Almost like from Pulp Fiction, the light
out of the suitcase. Yeah.
yeah.
Like some kind of godly artifact that makes him famous, and they're all just looking at it in like wonder and awe, and we never see it. And I think it's smart not to show it because, I mean, I can't think of anything that would make them so famous that people would want to track them down and kill them for it.
Yeah, so I guess we should get to that. The kind of, and it's the pacing of this movie is a little weird because they spend a lot of time just kind of hopping around time with no real direction. But then
I think it's building suspense. I think
yeah, kind of. They're definitely building suspense, but they find out that because they made this thing, people called editors who go back in time and kill people just after they make their greatest creation. Because they think that the people no longer go on to like help society in any way or contribute to society or the arts in any way. So
they said it was like a downfall of creativity or something. So it's like they're killing the people at their peak.
Yeah, it's like end on a high note. So they find out that this other character, Millie, who does eventually help them get back home to their time, is hunting them down. So the only reason she helped them get back, helped them get back home was to murder them when they made this note. So the character herself is
hot.
She I think we kind of like missed the most important part, or not most important part, the most I guess interesting way that they saved money on this movie was by saying that the time machines are like
in their bodies
grafted onto their skeletons, so there's no need for like big portals or spaceships or anything crazy like that. Or like
big equipment pieces they gotta hold. Yeah. Yeah.
So the main
that was also a riff back on Terminator, because I can't remember, but one of the characters says, "What does she think she's fucking Terminator or something?"
Yeah. When he says when he initially tells them about him meeting Cassie, Anna Faris's character.
That's right.
He mentions the skeleton's built into her skin, or the time machine is built into her skeleton. So. But they mention in the movie kind of early on all the like rules, like the silly rules for time travel, like you can't like touch yourself, or
I forgot about that part. Don't sleep with anybody because it usually turns out to be your mom or somebody.
Don't sleep with anybody because it turns out to be your mom or your grandma.
Which is a riff on, Back to the Future.
Oh yeah, right. There's some other silly ones that I found just looking around. You can only travel in groups of 3 at a time. And it says why 3? Because that's the size of the group they want to use in the game Chrono Trigger. I don't know what that means.
I don't know either. Did you look that up?
Yeah, there's just some other like common time travel rules. Um, some of them are pretty ridiculous. Just like
what? What's the most ridiculous one you've seen?
well, this one it says you can be hypnotized into time travel, but snapped out with a penny. And apparently, in the movie Somewhere in Time, Christopher Reeve uses self hypnosis to send himself back in time.
Huh. I watched that movie a way long time ago. I don't remember that part.
The only movie I remember with Christopher Reeves is the one where he's in his wheelchair already, and there's like an evil monkey trying to kill him or something like that. It was a weird.
Oh, what the fuck is that called?
I don't know. That's another time for another show.
Another Google search.
Another. Um, yeah. So let's see. We talked about what's your favorite time travel movie. When the writer did his AMA on Reddit, they asked him about kind of how he managed a timeline as far as like keeping your time travel story where you're jumping back and forth all kind of as continuous as you can. And it's funny, he quoted Stephen King.
Really?
And I'll read the quote, but it basically boils down to like, because you're doing a time travel movie, if you need to go back and change something, just go back and change it. Stephen King says, if you write your hero into a corner in chapter 10 and you think he could really do with a gun, you can always go back and give him one in chapter 2. So that's Stephen King's quote. So it's like you're changing time essentially. Why would you limit yourself?
Yeah, but I mean, I could see that being done in books, but Stephen King writes 600, 800, 900 page books. Well, okay, maybe not 900, but he's got like a 600-page book. Trying to get all that information, 600 pages of writing into a movie now movies these days are about 2 hours. They used to be 90 minutes, now they're about 2 hours. Trying to get all that information into one movie is so difficult that you have to split it up. So in the movie version, they'd probably cut the fact where, well, we'd go back and give him a gun. They'd probably just write it into the screenplay where, well, now he's got a gun.
Yeah, I think that's kind of what they're saying is like you're changing things up already. Like you're the creator of this story. So
right. But yeah, don't limit yourself. It's a time travel movie. Like do whatever you want.
Yeah. As someone who makes films, have you ever wanted to do a time travel film or thought about doing that?
Well, actually, last semester somebody wrote a script about a time travel movie, and I was going to DP it, director of photography, not the other meaning that most people think when they hear DP.
Fair enough.
Let's just get that out there.
Not that you'd be opposed, but that's not what you were talking about.
Yeah, I was going to be the director of photography on that, but I've read the script, and there's people in film school where they want honest feedback, and then they kind of want you to just lie to them so they don't feel bad.
Yeah.
This guy was like, tear it apart. Tell me what doesn't work.
Yeah.
And I was like, well, this sucks. So like, the way that he wrote his script was the budget would have to be $200 million to be able to even film any of this. Like he wanted to go back into like the Jurassic period and then move into the 50s and then the 70s and then go into the 90s and then present and then go into the future and then come back. So he wanted to do so much time travel that I was like, I don't want to be a part of this. This is too much. But that was the only time that I've actually ever really thought about doing a time travel movie. After watching this movie, I thought, this is a pretty simple way to do it. This didn't take a lot of time. The writing was very clever, but it just depends what you want to do, really.
Yeah, I think you should go back to that guy and show him this movie and say, this is how you do it on a budget. Like, no fucking dinosaurs.
I remember one of the scene headings was I can't remember the character's name, but like man drops in from the portal, lands on his face, rolls over, and the pike of the Stegosaurus is trying to hit him. So like the second he enters into the Jurassic world, they're immediately trying to kill him. And I was like, how the fuck are we gonna film any of this? Like, do you want to just do special effects where like mechanical effects where we just like have some guy dressed up in a shit dinosaur? Or it was a mess. It actually didn't become anything. The director actually cut that script and never filmed it.
Huh.
It was too much. But yeah, this is the way that they went about this movie was smart. It was very well crafted, well written, and again, I think as it being a comedy film sells the illusion that you're watching a movie because I watched the full movie all the way through and didn't pause it or anything, and like I was involved throughout the whole time. I kind of at some point I forgot I was watching a movie, and that's kind of the whole point of filmmaking.
Yeah, it's definitely a bummer when you're engrossed in a movie and something happens that kind of pulls you out of it. I think no offense to the man, I think that's what the Stan Lee cameos did for me and a lot of the Marvel.
Oh, yeah.
It got to the point where I think it was like Guardians 2 where they kind of rolled it into it was working for the Watchers type thing, so that's why he's like the same character and all these things. But it got to the point where it's like, oh, like I'm enthralled in this movie. It's like, oh, there's Stan Lee. So
it's like it was a joke, and they did it the first couple movies of MCU, and then someone or Hollywood, some executive decided, let's do it in all of them. But then they didn't realize the dude's 85 and he's probably going to die soon. Shit. Shocker. Yeah. Spoiler alert.
Yeah, rest in peace. But, like I said, I think they kind of fixed it towards the end, and I definitely will miss seeing him in the next movie.
I guess he's supposed to have a really heartfelt message in Marvel.
Oh, really? Interesting.
Yeah, I read an article earlier today that said the last time we see him in anything is Captain Marvel, and there's like a heartfelt, I don't know if it's a heartfelt message at the end of the film or if it's like while he's on screen in the movie. I don't know.
Ooh, someone knows how to read.
Yeah, well, it took me about 26 years, but I'm almost there.
Nice.
I'm almost all the way to L.
So I think we could get to the end of the movie where they are at the bar kind of in a bit of a standoff situation where the character who's trying to kill them is
hot.
She wasn't ugly. She has some weird, interesting,
attributes.
Yeah, there's some weird things, but
I know which one you're thinking of.
But so she's like appealing to Toby, the character who wrote down this life-changing whatever he wrote on the piece of paper, and she's appealing and she says, I can kill you now and you'll go on to be a legend, or you can live and keep writing crap and
nobody will give a shit about you kind of thing.
Nobody cares about you. And he struggles with it for longer than you really should. I mean, to comedic effect. It's not like it was a bad scene in the movie. It was funny how long he struggled with it. But it gets so far as to the end, and I'll spoiler alert this.
Spoiler.
For this movie that was made in 2009. It gets to the point where she does wind up killing everybody at the bar, including our three main characters. And at the last second, as Chris O'Dowd is kind of in his like dying breaths, he reaches up and knocks over a beer onto this paper, and the beer kind of like welts away all the writing, meaning that none of what we watched happened, like at all.
Yeah, the last hour we just watched them go through this horrible nightmare. It's just like, oh, done. Nope, didn't happen.
And normally I feel like that would be a big kind of rip-off moment in most movies. It's like in Lost where you wait, like they, spoiler alert for Lost, they find out they're all in heaven at the end, or but it would feel like a bit of a ripoff in most movies, except in a good time travel movie, it's kind of the point is you want everything to go back to the way it was before, mostly. Like it's you don't want things to stay broken and changed like they were during a good chunk of this movie.
Yeah, they call it a back to one or a book ending, because you have the cover of a book. The cover of a book should look the same as the back of the book, so it kind of like starts. The pages would be like the story, and then it ends the same way.
Yeah, it's just like all the 30-minute sitcoms where they have an issue, a couple minutes into the show, and then it's resolved by the end, and everything's the same.
Right, and then every episode, it's like, oh, hey, there's another issue. Like, damn.
Yeah.
Yeah, I actually like the fact that they didn't try to open it up to another film. I'm not a big fan of films where I think our society these days are getting too worked up on waiting for something during the end of the credits or waiting till the very end of the film to see if there'll be a number two. If the studios want a number two, they're going to write a number two and do a number two regardless. So, like, get a good ending. Like, let it end on something good and not try to set up for a second film. Unless the setup is something so badass or that everybody agrees on it, then sure.
So, it's funny that you say that because did you watch through most of the credits?
I watched to the very end of the credits where there was the post scene.
Yeah. So there was like a post-credit scene and even like almost a mid-credit scene where Anna Faris comes out of an actual like big CGI portal, and like you said, she like runs right up to Chris O'Dowd and gives him a big kiss and says, "We've been dating for 2 years," which, I mean, he gets to skip the whole like awkward beginning parts of a relationship where you don't know like what's okay, or like he got way over that, and now it's just like that's steady dating at 2 years at that point. But yeah, they come out and she's like, "Come on me with this adventure, come with me on this adventure," where she uses the word, she says it's not time travel, it's another dimension.
Interdimension travel.
Yeah, so it's almost like they did set it up for a sequel, where like you could easily, if you wanted to, if all of a sudden, say some random podcast brings up your old 2009 movie, and then suddenly everybody starts rewatching it again, demands a sequel, they can go on and do like an interdimensional travel, frequently asked questions about interdimensional travel or something like that. So if they really wanted to, there's easily room for a sequel there. But I agree with you. I don't think that they should.
Well, the way they did it, and I don't know if you watched it, like not very far past the credits, like not even a full minute into the credits, there is another scene. I don't know if you watched it.
Yeah, isn't that where
they walk from behind the brick wall?
Yeah.
Okay, so yeah, it's like within 30 seconds. So the way they end the film, I actually thought it was smart. Because around 2008, 2009, this is when all of the post-credit scenes, this is when it started to happen. People were thinking like, every filmmaker was like, we got to have a post-credit scene to get people involved in the next one. So everybody did it. And so, but they did it differently. They didn't just do one. They did one right at the very end that set up the next film, if there ever be another film. And then they let the credits kind of roll through a little bit. And then like within 20 seconds, they cut to the exact same way that they are revealed in every other time warp, where they just kind of walk in and they're like, oh, okay, oh, damn it. And then something happens and then it cuts there. So it leaves it on like a comedic type of post-credit scene. Because like you saw what happened where the one character became like, it was like they were twins, or they were like one got shapeshifted into the other. Yeah. And so it piqued your curiosity for the next film.
Yeah, and it's also they're just kind of like playing around with it. It seemed like they were kind of just playing at the end there with like silly like movie trope type things where they got the like you said, the evil twin scenario, or
what I don't really know what that was, but yeah.
Yeah, it seemed like it was pretty random and silly, but
that's the reason. Like I wanted to know what the fuck happened.
Yeah.
Got to pay for number 2 to see what happened.
I guess so.
It's weird to think like filmmaking and movies, they're all about people asking questions and getting answers. Like that's all it ever really is. And it's just the way that happens is told in such a weird and such a stylized effect that we sit there in one spot for 2 hours just listening to people ask questions and give answers.
Yeah.
With maybe the occasional side boob or badass action scene.
Definitely. Yeah. So I guess one question I would ask, since we're asking questions and getting answers, is if you could go back in time and do/change one thing with zero consequences, what would you do besides killing Hitler? Not because I want to like protect Hitler, just because that's what everyone would pick, because that would be like the most good scenario.
Can I bring attention to the fact that everybody in the world would probably do that first? Like we might all be divided, but if we can all come together and just kill Hitler in time, it's always the first thing. It's always the first thing if somebody says or mentions or thinks about.
They mentioned it in the movie when he first meets Anna Faris. He goes, "Well, why don't you just go back and kill Hitler?" And she's like, "Oh, that would be a time crime. I couldn't do that."
I like how they addressed that, because every time movie that I've ever seen is like, yeah, that's really cool that you can go and do this, but why don't you go back and do something that matters?
Yeah.
All right. So, man, okay, if I could go back in time, only once.
Yeah.
Only once.
You get back to your time eventually.
What if I decide to stay in that time and see how that time goes?
I mean, if that's what you want to do.
Okay.
This is your fantastic voyage, not mine.
All right. I would say, you know what? I wouldn't. I would go back and maybe fix some mistakes that I've made, like it's always past relationships, you know, like whether it's a friend or girlfriend. Like, oh man, I wonder what would have happened if we were still together. Go back in time to see how that plays out. But I like the way my life is right now, and I think it's going very well. And I didn't really realize how good my life is right now until you just asked me if I would change anything. So I guess that's a good thing.
I mean, it's interesting. I'm glad I can provoke those emotions. You know, I think I feel mostly the same way. I think if I did have the opportunity to go back in time, there was this one time I was at a nice restaurant, and I got the soup, and I should have gone salad. So.
Oh, it was in France, and it cost me so much, and I was like, "Damn it, should have got the salad."
I mean, the salad just looks so good. You know, they tricked me, but.
If we're being realistic, if I had to pick one moment that I can change and come back to and still kind of continue everything, I would say it would be the moment. It'd probably be the moment I got picked up for public intoxication.
I
would have hid. I would have hid better than where they found me.
Not drinking less, just hid.
Well, I mean, I remember everything, and the night was fun. The only reason I got picked up is because I was 20, and I was 2 weeks away from turning 21.
Ah, shit.
And the officer that pulled me over was like, "Hey, what's going on?" And I told him,
like, "What the shit, man? I get a month's leniency if my license expires, but I don't get 2 weeks for turning 21."
The funny thing is that officer was really cool about it. He's like, "Hey, I get it. I used to be, you know," I was like, "I was your age once too." He's like, "Let me just get your license, your ID, and tell me where you live, and I'll let you just walk back home. But I'm gonna follow you back home because I told him I lived 2 blocks down the street." And I did. And he's like, I can't give you a ride home, but I'll let you walk down the street and I'll follow you, make sure you get home safe. I was like, awesome. So he was gonna let me go. And I was all excited, and earlier I was sitting there thinking, as I'm handcuffed to the ground, or like sitting on my hands on the ground, I was like, man, I'm glad I didn't run away, because I was really thinking about just booking it down the street.
That's funny.
And then right as I'm thinking that, this other cop comes around the corner, and my immediate thought was, they're definitely not both going to let me go. So if I could go back in time, I would have seen the cop car and like tackled myself out of the way and then ran away so my previous self couldn't see myself, but enough to hide me from the cop car.
That's funny.
So I just think somebody attacked me, and then I don't have a public intoxication on my record. And I think it's actually off my record right now. It's not even on there anymore, so I don't know why I give a shit, but that's the only bad thing that ever happened to me.
That's great.
You got to give me a real answer. None of the soup salad bullshit. Right.
Real answer.
It's kind of hard to think about.
You know, if I had the opportunity to go back in time, I would probably convince myself to pay more attention in high school. I graduated on time and everything like that, but I did a lot of fucking off in high school. So I think I could have, I mean, not that I'm doing badly now, but I maybe could have gotten here a little bit quicker if I had been better in high school.
Or just to see where you would be.
Yeah.
What did you want to do in high school when you were a senior? And I'm sure everybody, your family's family were like, "What are you gonna do?" What did you tell them?
When I was a senior, I just wanted to get the fuck out of school and keep smoking weed. But when I was in high school, like when I actually cared about high school, I wanted to go into the military.
Really?
Yeah. Yeah. Things change, don't they?
Oh, yeah, definitely. I mean, when people asked me what I wanted to do, and I was like, I want to be an architect. And then I realized you've got like 9 more years of math. I said, fuck that. Hey, look at that cool film camera. I'll just start learning this instead.
And you know, all that hard work at film school has got you a spot on this podcast. So
I mean, at least it paid off, you know, the tuition. I mean, as an accredited podcast like this one.
On that note, I appreciate you watching this movie with me. I appreciate you coming on the show. We appreciate anybody who time traveled from a year ago to today to listen to us again. And thanks for stopping by Absurdist Asylum. Brad, you got anything you want to say?
Yeah, I want to know, how long have you been waiting to land that joke?
I mean, since the moment I picked time travel as my movie, and then realized today that it had been a full year since we did the last one.
Damn, I can't believe it's a full year. Well, it was funny and I laughed at it, so it worked.
All right. Well, we'll catch you guys on the next one. That is absurdasylum@gmail.com if you want to send us an email. Absurdist Asylum it's at Absurdist Asylum on Twitter, and fuck Facebook. So yeah, we'll catch you guys next time.